All right, we should be live. And I might have just blown out your audio. But regardless, welcome to a Monday Night Live. Where we're going to hang out and talk about war in America and how they're trying to start one here in some ways, and how we're witnessing the beginning of what could be actual conflict on American soil. But obviously, things can change. And of course, as things develop and progress, obviously the outcome could be different. But right now, there are a lot of concerns and catalysts involved with what's happening on the ground that I want to share with you because it's indicative of additional tension moving forward into the future. And we have to keep in mind that our enemies, both foreign and domestic, are constantly trying to leverage whatever they can to create chaos and to destabilize the country from within. And right now, I believe that that's what we're witnessing. And I think that they have obviously identified a soft point when it comes to where they can penetrate the deepest. So they are pushing that agenda as well, fast and hard as possible in order to really send us over the edge of the cliff. So that's what we're discussing tonight. And of course, I do want to say thank you all for being here. I've got 5x5s coming in from Harbor Prepper, Off-Road Armada. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for chiming in. We got Texas Surplus Pro here as well. Silent Guard, it was not canceled, just delayed. I had a lot to do today and I just couldn't get everything done in time. So I appreciate everybody understanding. We have Bogaloo at the 420x69. And that's my kind of people right there. I'm sure that they're a good time, especially at a dive bar. And then we have Dave Sickles with the good evening, and I say hello to you as well. DL says Canada says hi. Well, hello, Canada. I can basically see your border half the time whenever the sun is just right. So good to see you as well. And of course, Libro11C says, what's up, Magic? And I said, what's up to you as well. Steven, I heard Magic say penetrate hard and fast, and I wonder what I missed. Well, you know what? Let your mind roam, because we're here to have a good time, but also educate ourselves, which means expanding our intellectual thought process. And maybe that pushes you into a new realm of possibilities. So, all right. All right, Great Value Trucker, 5x5 new member here. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you, and thanks for being a channel member. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to you coming to hang out in the private live streams if you're able to do so. And tonight's will start at 9:45 p.m. Central Standard Time. So, Cold Reality, good to see you. Let's start talking about some interesting things that have been happening. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually share an official announcement from the Department of Homeland Security that has to do with ICE agents being doxxed and things of that nature occurring, especially in Portland, Oregon. So we're going to go ahead and touch on that because it is an interesting situation. Let me just jump on here real quick. There we go. All right, I love when your standard interface changes the UI and just expects you to just know where everything is, because why wouldn't we just move buttons around? Anarchists and rioters in Portland illegally dox ICE officers and federal law enforcement. Now, here's why we're discussing ICE and the immigration raids and things of that nature tonight. This is a obvious point of contention that drives a lot of emotion, and so I look at it as a very probable attack vector for those who want to destabilize and damage the U.S. This is the easiest place for them to do it at this current point in time. We've seen other instances of this, right? We've seen what happened with the Free Palestine movement and the college campus protests, and then we also saw what happened during 2020 riots, and we know how they use these events to push things into a more violent territory if possible. And what we're seeing with these situations is things are becoming more violent. They're propping up, civilians against the police in order to create that dynamic, while also pushing the envelope to the point of expecting some level of violent return. And as of right now, we haven't necessarily seen that full blown as of yet. But once that occurs, then they'll have the ammunition to move forward to push more people into more extremist viewpoints as well as extremist action. So that's why we're focusing on this. It's not necessarily because you need to concern yourself with whether or not you like what's happening, or whether or not you think that this or that should be done or shouldn't be done, or whatever it is, right? It's more about what this is being used for by those who do not have your best interest at heart, okay? Portland, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem today released the following statement addressing criminals and Antifa-affiliated groups' continued efforts to dox the personal information of immigration and customs enforcement officers in Oregon. ICE law enforcement is facing a nearly 700% increase in assaults against them. These doxing websites that attempt to reveal ICE officers' identity and even their families and children put our law enforcement in grave danger as highly sophisticated gangs like Tren de Aragua and MS-13, criminal rings, murderers, and rapists can use this information to carry out attacks on federal law enforcement and their families. We will prosecute those who dox ICE agents to the fullest extent of the law. These criminals are taking the side of vicious cartels and human traffickers, said Secretary Noam. We won't allow it in America. Now, something that I want to take away from that statement and something that you should consider while we're going through this discussion is that I do believe there's a level of truth there. Whether or not Kristi Noem is a character of sorts, let's just say, what she is saying there is accurate to the point of they're taking the sides of vicious cartels and human traffickers because it is true that these criminal organizations are actually part of the fuel of this fire. They are pushing for this instability because it's where they can be the most profitable, and for them, this is actually causing them financial harm when it comes to their industry, whether or not that's trafficking or whether or not that's drugs or whatever else it is they're trying to do. With a secure border and with the ICE raids continually occurring, it creates a less confident atmosphere for these criminal organizations to operate in. So they are financially invested in trying to disrupt the activities of this enforcement. Now, I know the people who are out there trying to do what they feel is righteous in the sense of, doxing police or whatever they feel is actually reasonable in their mind, likely don't look at it through that lens. But unfortunately, they're being used by some of these groups to further their agenda, whether or not they are aware of it. So, across the country, federal law enforcement has come under attack. Gunmen opened fire on a Border Patrol and ICE officer in Texas over the 4th of July weekend on 2 separate occasions, seriously wounding 2. Multiple organizations appear to be responsible for doxing these federal officers, including an anarchist and Antifa-affiliated group based in Portland called Rose City Counter Info and another called the Christian Daily. Both these groups have published the names, pictures, and personal address of ICE officers on their websites. Criminals have posted flyers in officers' neighborhoods that includes their name, address, pictures of them, and their families. These flyers threaten officers with text that says, "No peace for ICE" and "Chinga la migra," okay? Which, sorry to any of our Spanish-speaking audience members there. I don't usually curse on this channel, but I felt like I wanted to say that one. So, clearly, there's a lot going on, especially in Portland. We already know the deal in Portland, and we already know that this is just kind of part of that campaign to push things into that violent territory. And so what does this do? Well, it creates an uncertainty and a level of fear within the ICE officer ranks because, like they said, they're not just doxing them. They're doxing their families, their children, their addresses, so they feel like their families are in potential danger. And understand that when you are affiliated or operating with these criminal organizations, these cartels, there's actually a propensity for that danger to actually show up one day, since that's how they operate in Mexico. They will intimidate police, they will use their families and their children as leverage, and they will try to implement their will through violence. So these are reasonable concerns and things that I could understand being upset about as an ICE agent or a police officer in general, but it's also being used by people who are far and beyond just cartels and just Department of Homeland Security. This is being used by people to try to turn the streets of America into a war zone through the distrust and the angst against police, while the police are living in a level of fear, which makes them more reactive and possibly more prone to mistakes. And what that does is create a snowball and like more of like a secular effect that's going to spiral out of control at a certain point if we don't get things a little bit more secure. So let's jump back in the chat here for a minute. Cherokee Survival, hello to you. You're in North Carolina, and glad you're here. Thanks for being here. Taiwa says, crap, forgot it was Monday. I'll have to catch the replay. Yeah, you'll be okay. The replay will exist, and I appreciate you coming back. Of course, replay crew, make sure you check in the comment section. And if you don't mind leaving a like or sharing the video or subscribing if you're new here, I would appreciate it because it does help quite a bit. Now, Savage Lee, sorry, no comprendo, friendo. No worries, I still appreciate you, and we're usually on the same page, so I think we'll be okay. Sterox, good to see you, glad you're here, I appreciate it. Now, that double speed should be interesting, because I generally talk relatively quickly, at least I think so, even though this is a lot of times my usual cadence. I just, especially when there's no one to interrupt me, I just keep going. And maybe that's a gift, but at times it can be a curse. Let's talk about what happened, though, which was referenced in that DHS report regarding that attack on that ICE facility. Okay, so this is more indicative of that actual kinetic action on the ground, which is where a lot of my concerns begin to come from, because when things go hot, it's hard to put them back in the bottle, right? By the way, if you have tried out the 511 Tactical McLean sneakers, let me know. There's not many shoe options for me. I wear a size 15, and I just want something comfortable, all black, and just casual enough, but still durable enough to wear wherever. And it's just hard to find. And one of the things I found was that 511 Tactical McLean shoe. So I might be interested in it, but I know nothing about it. So let me know your thoughts if you have indeed worn a pair, and that way I can make a more informed decision. 10 charged with attempted murder after allegedly ambushing Texas ICE agents. Federal prosecutors described a planned ambush with intent to kill ICE correction officers on 4th of July in Alvarado. 10 people have been charged with attempted murder after allegedly ambushing U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE agents. Hold on one second. Just want to make sure we're good here. Things get weird sometimes on stream. Okay. ICE agents in Texas on the 4th of July. Federal prosecutors said attackers drew the agents out of an ICE detention center in Alvarado, Texas, with fireworks by vandalizing vehicles. They allegedly shot a police officer in the neck and unloaded between 20 and 30 rounds on immigration agents and were later apprehended by local law enforcement near the scene. It was a planned ambush with the intent to kill ICE correction officers, said Nancy Larson, U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Texas, at a press conference on Monday. Make no mistake, this was not a so-called peaceful protest. It was indeed an ambush. Larson said the assailants began shooting fireworks outside the Prairieland ICE Detention Center about an hour south of Dallas in Alvarado, Texas at the approximately 10:37 p.m. The fireworks drew agents outside and found the group spray painting vehicles with ice pig, traitor, and other profanity, according to Larson. A gunman who was positioned in the woods away from the group then fired a shot at a local police officer who was also on the scene and hit him in the neck area. She added that a second gunman unloaded between 20 and 30 rounds on ICE corrections officers who she said were unarmed. This was an egregious attack on federal and local law enforcement officers, and it is part of an increasing trend of violence against them, Larson said, adding that a jammed AR-style rifle was later found abandoned in the woods. 10 people, most of them from Dallas-Fort Worth area, were charged with 3 counts of attempted murder. An 11th co-conspirator faces obstruction of justice charges. Okay, now, for 1 second, I just want to go ahead and mention that that AR-style rifle that was jammed, I'm just curious what it might have been, because it's always just fun to know that kind of information, right? Probably bad maintenance, or probably something that they didn't realize how to fix because they didn't have proper techniques, let's just say. But good thing it probably was that, or it was probably a good thing that it did jam, because that was an egregious attack. So, Larson said local sheriff's deputies caught the alleged assailants in 2 separate vehicles near the facility, both with tactical-style vests and weapons. One group of 7 alleged assailants was also covered in mud. We found masks, goggles, tactical gloves in a residence, said Larson, along with additional body armor, spray paint, fireworks, and again, insurrectionist materials. The attack comes after police said a man with an assault rifle shot at officers leaving a Texas Border Patrol facility on Monday. But that guy got schwacked because he was messing with the wrong group of law enforcement officers, or at least that's my understanding of that. So, here's the reason why I wanted to bring that story up and wanted to touch base on it. We're talking about an organized group of people who are willing to actually execute officers on the scene of an ambush. So they used distraction tactics, the fireworks and the spray painting, to grab attention and to draw them out of a secured facility. And then they had gunmen stationed in the woods in guerrilla warfare fashion who were willing to then take shots at these police officers once the distraction was successful. And so this shows a level of organization and willingness that goes a little bit above and beyond what we're generally seeing. Generally, we see a lot of lone gunman type stuff happen during these situations, right? We see these guys who have been radicalized and have been pushed and pressured into doing egregious acts, and then they go do something awful, like the shooter in Idaho, per se. And then, of course, it's generally resolved with either them eliminating themselves or being eliminated by police. But this situation involved over 10 people. So that's a large group. If those 10 people came to your home to get rid of you and then use these same tactics, right? They start shooting fireworks at your house, they spray paint your car, and you're like looking at them, maybe you use your security cameras, and you're like, what the heck is going on? The smart thing to do, by the way, is just call the police to come see what's going on. It's very natural for our instincts to be, hey, I'm going to go outside and get rid of this or see what the heck is happening, right? But the reality is that you should call the police because they can show up, better equipped than, well, let's not say better equipped, but let's just say with backup, right? And then they can hopefully deal with the situation or de-escalate it more than what would happen if they were really planning on trying to get rid of you. Because fireworks on your house, spray painting your car, middle of the night, you're mad, you're going to grab a rifle or something, walk out the front door, they got 2 people waiting in the bushes, they start shooting at you, it's over, right? And so this is something that I wanted to really focus in on a little bit because these particular attacks are becoming, well, more brazen and at the same time, more organized. And if these continue to develop or continue to, rise in frequency, this is an indicator of things getting much worse on the ground here in the U.S. Compared to what we've experienced here in recent times. So I just wanted to bring that up and really drive that one home because it is an indication of getting closer to that collapse type scenario, war in America type scenario. I'm not necessarily pushing the idea that I've seen thrown out there recently of civil war per se, because I don't exactly think that's how this would look. I think this would turn into some sort of, isolated, factionalized warfare that happens in sporadic incidents throughout the country, but not necessarily on a national scale, if that makes sense. So, Florida Sheepdog said, they needed the MP field tool. Yes, you know what? They might just need that. So, and I'll mention that real quick because you brought it up, not me. But MP field tool is currently selling. The first production run sold out so fast it blew our minds. So a big thank you to all of you for that, and I really appreciate all the support we've gotten. It's incredible. It's made in the USA, and if you want more info on it, go to magicpepper.com. You can get all the info about the tool there. You can order it or learn how to order it there, right? Which will then direct you to my partner at EDC Specialties, who is actually facilitating shipping and logistics and everything else, and payment processing. But basically, if you want to support the channel and get something really cool and useful out of it, check out magicpepper.com and check out the MP Field Tool because it's I'm very proud of it. It's doing very well. I'm really just blown away by the level of support we've received. And even though right now we're technically back ordered, just keep placing orders because we are making a ton of MP Field Tools right now. And as soon as they're done, which will be by the end of this week, or at the very least in the next 5 to 7 business days, we are going to be shipping them out ASAP. So don't be afraid to place an order. We're just trying to catch up because we had no idea it was going to do so well. And I can't say thank you enough for that. So, just Brian, thank you for all you do in bringing info. Well, thank you, Brian. I appreciate that, and I'm doing the best I can here. Show Intel, good to see you. Glad to hear. Nick Easy, good to see you as well. Thank you for being here. Okay, so let's keep going. Now, that whole situation involving 10 people or more, right, that were organized and there to, literally eliminate ICE agents. One of them got away, and there's a manhunt for them right now. So this story is actually from today. Manhunt for ICE facility attack suspect reaches 10 days with reward money on the line. The FBI is offering $25,000 for information leading to this person's arrest. A military veteran, okay? Now, here's the thing. One thing that we maybe mistake in this community on a regular basis, and I think it's something we have to remember and keep in mind, is that just because somebody served in the military doesn't mean they have the same ideology or belief system as you, right? And I don't try to alienate any particular ideologies or belief systems or anything like that here on this channel. I try to, bring preparedness to as many people as possible because I think that there's a level of that kind of bringing us together in a strange way that might actually surpass and go beyond some of our petty differences if there ever is an emergency, which we see happening all the time in the country when there's natural disasters. People don't ask who you voted for when you desperately need a bottle of water, right? So I think that that's important to try to keep everybody accessible when it comes to, trying to help people when it comes to preparedness. But at the same time, when it comes to, situations involving you and your own and the groups of people that you obviously work with or hang out with or spend your time with, or your organizations or your fellowships or whatever it is, obviously there's going to be certain levels of ideology or certain levels of belief systems there in general, just because that's how we work. And you have to keep in mind, like, someone having prior military service doesn't necessarily mean that they're on your side, right? Or that they're on the side that you assume they would be, right? So I just want to make sure to drive that home, because we have examples of this quite often, but it seems like there's this thought process that it only applies to one side of the equation. And so you always hear people say, like, oh, if civil war happened here, the right would win because we have all the veterans and all the guns, right? And there is a level of truth to that, of course, but all is a strong word, because that's not necessarily true. And so some of that military training and some of those firearms and everything else related to that type of conversation also resides on the other side of the aisle. So, like, we have to keep these things in mind and not be so complacent about things just because we usually encounter that type of thought process, right? So, Benjamin Henil Song, 32 of Dallas, was named as a suspect on Thursday, almost a week after he allegedly joined a group of 10 to 12 others in an organized attack on officers at the Prairieland Detention Center in Alvarado, Texas on July 4th. 10 assailants were apprehended at the time, though Song managed to evade capture, authorities said. We believe he is somewhere in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but have expanded our publicity efforts to neighboring states just in case, the FBI Dallas field office told Fox News Digital on Monday. This guy has been missing for 10 days. He could be anywhere, right? You can get anywhere in the country in 10 days. So, FBI noted that it's still offering a $25,000 reward for information leading to Song's arrest and conviction. The Bureau previously said Song should be considered armed and dangerous. Another thing to consider. By the way, if you didn't know about this and now you do know about this, and then you do call the FBI because you actually know who this person is and you get that $25,000 reward, don't forget me, right? Like, I helped you out because you wouldn't have known otherwise, I'm kidding. I actually don't want to be involved with that because, I feel like that's just a good way to get yourself involved in things you don't necessarily need to be part of. But regardless, okay? Song, a former U.S. Marine Corps reservist, is accused of firing 2 AR-15 style rifles at 2 correctional officers and 1 Alvarado police officer, according to a criminal complaint obtained by Fox News Digital last week. The Alvarado police officer was shot in the neck by a suspect in the woods, according to the complaint. Another assailant fired dozens of rounds at unarmed correctional officers who had stepped outside the facility. Song faces 3 counts of attempted murder of a federal officer and 3 counts of discharging a firearm in furtherance of a crime of violence. Okay, and keep in mind that that's a federal crime, so it goes right across state lines. This person is going to be hunted by the federal authorities, and we'll see what happens. But that's an egregious attack. I don't know how else to kind of reiterate that, but we don't see attacks like that very often, where police are lured out of a facility and then ambushed from the woods with actual, like, rifle fire, right? Like, this was an insurgency attack, in all honesty. Anyone else still using a Nalgene bottle that they've had for like 20 years? Because you know what? It's just, it's hard to get rid of old habits, Water. Just doing water tonight. I didn't have time to make coffee, and I still wanted to get in here at a reasonable time for you all. So, no coffee tonight, but you know what? We got to hydrate somehow. Now, I'm going to go ahead and jump in the chat here for a minute, because I like you guys, okay? Le Pepita de Oro. Hopefully I said that right. I actually speak pretty good Spanish. I know it's lore that a lot of people don't know, but Magic Pepper, could make his way through a Latin American country if needed. I'm just saying, okay? I'm not going to be the guy to try to sell you a mortgage in Spanish. That's not going to happen. But, getting through normal daily life type stuff, yeah, I got you, man. Okay, that is very true. Having been in any Army force does not mean you are a law-abiding person. In fact, all things considered, most of the vets due to post-traumatic stress syndrome are prone to violence, says La Pepita de Oro. Well, and then they also said, and that is why we need to support our vets, okay? So, and obviously, I don't generally like blanket statements of like, that's why like a lot of them are prone to this or that. But at the same time, I understand where you're coming from. It's true. We can't just assume somebody's belief system or their morals or anything like that just because of prior service, although I think it's still wise for us to support our military veterans, and I think it's wise for us to try to, bring more attention to the fact that a lot of them do need additional support that they don't receive, and that maybe that additional support would make the difference of some of them, having some of these issues that pushes them to do some of these more egregious behaviors, right? So I think that's important, and I appreciate the sentiment there. Let's see here. The MP tool looks awesome, pretty nifty. Ray D86. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I am, very grateful to the support and very grateful to the kind words people have brought up about it. There are currently Marines out there armed with full auto. When things get out of hand, some will definitely stay on the legal system side, either out of fear or they're just, a bad person, basically is what Silent Guard just said. And, I think that's something that we always consider. It's just the way it works, right? I mean, the just following orders crowd is going to just follow orders sometime, okay? Just the truth. Porky Prepper says, I just ordered my tool. No oddball comments, please. Well, you know what? I just wanted to make my tool available to as many people as possible. So you're all very welcome that you have a chance to get a piece of the MP field tool. So well, I'll hear about that one from my wife later. Now, Kevin Brown, no sugar tonight in my coffee, no sugar tonight in my tea. You know what? This is why we get along, Kevin Brown. I appreciate you. This other ICE raid has brought a lot of attention, but it's something that I want to talk about because it shows that we're also seeing fatalities now, and then this fatality situation, which who knows, I don't know the exact details of whether or not it was accidental, right? But we know that someone fell off a roof of a greenhouse. And I'm going to say this as sensitively as possible. And anytime someone dies when they were not supposed to, it's tragic. And we should, mourn the fact that somebody lost their life when it wasn't necessary. So it's unfortunate. And I don't ever, celebrate something like that occurring. But I also try to be realistic and remove emotions from some of the equation when I can to understand that no matter what, when you have large operations with a lot of people involved and a lot of moving parts, this applies to police, it applies to the military, it applies to organized crime. There is such a thing as collateral damage, and sometimes that collateral damage is tragic. And that's, I think, what happened here. But let's go ahead and talk about this because this is where things actually started to look like, like a conflict on the ground, like war in America. This is what it would start like, in my opinion. And this is kind of how it looks when you see these kind of what do I want to call them? These like mini skirmishes that occur in some of these Middle Eastern countries during their uprisings, right? When there's regime change or when there's civil wars or when, some Western country comes in and removes their entire leadership and then leaves them to fight for themselves about who's going to take charge. Not that that's ever happened, but regardless, this is what it looks like on these like isolated miniature skirmishes that occur, and that's why I'm bringing this to your attention because like these are the things we have to watch out for. If more of these events occur and they get larger in scope, they will be leveraged more by those that would like to see our demise, but also will demonstrate how much closer we're getting to additional strife and tension here in the country, which could eventually lead to hot kinetic action on the street. Right, which is what we're trying to avoid and what we don't want to have happen, but may happen whether or not we want it to or not. So, farm worker dies after ICE raid on cannabis farm. Authorities raided 2 Glasshouse Farms locations. Protesters clashed with officers on site. 8 minors in the U.S. illegally were found at one farm. A farm worker who was on life support with a brain injury after falling from a greenhouse during an immigration raid at 2 Southern California cannabis farms has died, his family confirmed. Jaime Alanis, 57, reportedly fell several stories from a structure at a Camarillo farm. The United Farm Workers Union previously said the man had died before the man was taken off life support. The man's family told News Nation affiliate KTLA that they were waiting for his wife to come from Mexico to say goodbye before he was taken off life support. With heavy hearts, my uncle has passed away, his niece wrote. The Department of Homeland Security released a statement saying this man was not in and has not been in CBP or ICE custody. Although he was not being pursued by law enforcement, this individual climbed up the roof of a greenhouse and fell 30 feet. CBP immediately called a medevac to the scene to get him care as quickly as possible. El Centro Sector Chief Gregory Bovino, who oversaw the operation, said agents rendered aid at the scene and disputed the claims that the man was being chased, calling such reports more lies by those who support illegal aliens. He said the man fell through a glass roof while fleeing and added, "Follow commands from law enforcement and you won't hurt yourself." The raids on Thursday resulted in more than 300 arrests, News Nation confirmed, and drew several hundred protesters, leading to clashes with officers. A raid at one farm stretched into the night, part of a coordinated operation headed by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Okay? In a statement, the United Farm Workers condemned the raids. It said farm workers were critically injured during the raids, and some, including U.S. citizens, remain unaccounted for. Our staff is on the ground supporting families. Many workers, including U.S. citizens, were held by federal authorities at the farm for 8 hours or more. U.S. citizen workers report only being released after they were forced to delete photos and videos of the raid from their phones, the union said. Right? And that is concerning, especially as a U.S. citizen. The UFW is also demanding independent legal representation for minor workers and noted that farm workers are excluded from basic child labor laws. Is that true? Farm workers are just excluded from basic child labor laws? I mean, maybe it's true. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm not a big fan of child labor. It's not really something I'd advocate for, and I'm not really, down with the idea of just saying, well, for certain work, an 8-year-old is reasonable to do, right? Like they can do it. And I don't agree with child labor per se. So just my thought process there. Anyhow, let's go ahead and talk about how some of this stuff went down here, okay? Glasshouse Farms bills itself as the largest cannabis operation in the world. On Thursday morning, convoys of military and immigration enforcement vehicles arrived at the farm, taking dozens of workers into custody. Many were lined up and guarded outside the building before being taken away. Clashes between protesters and federal officials got violent at times, with officers deploying tear gas, flashbang grenades, and non-lethal rounds. Dozens of protesters were arrested. One protester appeared to open fire at federal agents with a handgun in a video posted on X. The FBI is now offering a $50,000 reward for his capture and conviction. Now, that's an interesting one. He fired at officers but didn't hit anybody, it would seem, and with a handgun, and they offer a $50,000 reward. But the guy who shot a police officer in the neck with an AR-15 and ambushed a bunch of correctional officers from the woods, he gets a $25,000 reward. So I'm not really sure how the reward system works here, but part of me assumes that the AR-15 guy would have been, I don't know, like a bigger reward because he'd be more important to catch. I don't know, but this is where we're at. They can protest all they want, but if they cross the line, they're going to be arrested and they're going to be prosecuted, said Border Czar Tom Homan. There's zero tolerance. They have the First Amendment rights. I had 1,000 protesters at my house. Whatever. You're not going to stop me. I'm not going to shut up. I'll keep doing what I'm doing, but you can't cross that line. A second raid took place simultaneously at another glasshouse location about 35 miles away in Santa Barbara County. It's not yet known how many people were taken into custody, but the number is said to be in the dozens, okay? And I believe that number in total from both facilities was like 320. So that's a lot. And I just want to let you know that when these massive operations happen, things occur that are unfortunate, right? And that's what happened with this worker, Jaime, who fell through that greenhouse roof. He passed away, unfortunately and unnecessarily. So there we are. Now, let's see here. Got great people here in the chat. Show Intel, do you have an X account or a Discord? I do have a Discord. Go to magicprepper.com, and if you go to my networking page, you can find my Discord link, so you can jump in there if you'd like. But I'm also on X just as Magic Prepper, so you can find me there very easily as well. I'm not super active on X or in Discord because I'm just really busy, and I'm trying my best to keep up on everything, but it's been a lot lately, and I've been catching up on a lot of work while also trying to work with different companies and to keep things moving forward on the channel and also releasing my own product. And I'm like, wow, this is actually a lot. So okay, now Pesky Citizen Chris says you need to look up Karolyn Borisenko to understand the leftist talk. Okay, well, maybe that's something I'll check out because I don't know who that is. And you're right, maybe that is something I need to learn. Let's see here. Trying to jump back in the chat for a second. Defending modern U.S. federal government is like being a redcoat in 1776, just saying. Well, it just depends on how you want to look at it, Hustle Bones, because if we had no federal government, then we aren't really a country in the sense of sovereignty when it comes to the way that the federal government operates and the way it's supposed to maintain its level of clearance, right, when it comes to what it can actually do and what it's capable of doing based on the Constitutional and Article 2 and everything else. But at the same time, of course, you shouldn't just simp for the federal government just because, they are the federal government, right? Call out things that are wrong, ask questions, and obviously don't just agree with everything because your guy is in office or whatever it is, right? So there's a balance, of course. But, it's kind of like the same as saying, oh, well, supporting your police is dumb because, the police will arrest you if you do something wrong. Okay, well, first off, that's just how things work in a society that has some level of stability. But at the same time, if you need your police, which we generally do, then it's okay to support them. But if you don't have police, everyone thinks things would just be nice and hunky-dory because, we don't need them. Everyone will just chill and do their own thing. But that's just not true. There's a lot of dirtbags out there that won't just chill and do their own thing. And their own thing won't be chilling. It will be doing terrible things to other people because now they can. So it's a balance. And I understand what you're saying. I'm not necessarily arguing with you. I'm trying to just give you my point of view on it because there is a level of compromise we have to have in order to maintain some level of stability while also being willing to, speak up and not just agree with everything just because, and I think that's a big problem we're having right now, especially if you're, more conservative or on the right or whatever it is. Like right now is a weird time because some people are just gung-ho cool with everything no matter what because, well, it's my guy. And other people are asking questions and then they're being chastised for it. And it's a weird situation to be in right now. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later. What's up, KP Heathen? Good to see you. Glad you're here. Luke B, the older I get, the more of a genuine FUD I become in firearms taste only. I'm a 2A absolutist. Full auto for everyone. Well, I appreciate that about you, Luke, and I agree with you. The other day, I was looking at some bolt actions, and the one I gravitated towards the most had a wood stock. And I was like, what's happening to me, But at the same time, like, some things are just good because they're good, So here we are. Now, let's go ahead and talk about something that happened a little while ago, but I want to bring this to your attention just to remind you of this, okay? These ICE agents and the situation on the ground that could move things further forward towards some level of escalating conflict. This was something that was talked about way back in February, and these things get lost in the sauce, as they usually do, because, here we are trying to remember everything that ever occurred and then realizing that we can't. But basically, cartels authorized the use of weaponized drones against ICE agents back in February. And so we haven't seen this yet, really, but this is an actual threat that exists right now that is another thing that could push things into a new territory. And this is obviously driven from the battlefield and the war front. What we're seeing in Eastern Europe with Ukraine and Russia, drones are clearly weaponized and clearly being used successfully. And these organizations understand that and have learned from it and use them themselves to take out rival gangs. And so this is a real issue and a real threat that does currently exist, which could move things into a much hotter situation. So, cartels have authorized the use of weaponized drone explosives against border agents and other U.S. law enforcement at the southern border as violent threats are escalating on social media, with some promising the use of deadly force against ICE officers. So remember that these things started back in February with these criminal organizations planting the seeds, planting the pressure, and financing a lot of what's occurring right now that just doesn't seem linked together when you're always looking at it from one piece at a time, right? So when you go back and try to keep in mind things that have happened in the past that are relevant to what's going on right now, you can start to see the puzzle pieces come together and say, hey, actually, yeah, the cartels were pushing additional violence towards ICE at that time, and now that we're seeing that additional violence towards ICE, do you think there's any correlation? And of course, especially when it comes to the cartels, the answer should almost always be yes. But at the same time, that's not being reported per se as being a direct link, but that's how they operate. They don't have to link directly. They're going to just do things from the shadows and then allow them to unfold in whatever way that they do. As long as it creates that chaos and that disruption, it's going to help their business either way. So that's where we're at right now. So getting back into the chat here for a minute. We got great people here tonight. I really appreciate all of the discussion. Show Intel says thank you. Well, no problem. Thank you as well. Silent Guard. I mean, what ages are we talking about with child labor? Because 6-year-olds, history has proven they don't belong in factories. Well, here's the thing. They might yearn for the mines, but we shouldn't let them back in. We can avoid child labor. We don't need that. We're a country that should, have some standards when it comes to that stuff, and I don't think that's one of the ones we need to let go of, okay? Now, Janet LeBlanc says agricultural laws are different from other labor laws, including child labor. Understandable. Maybe still not a big fan of it, but yeah. I get it, but I'm still not a big fan of all that when it comes to, putting kids to work. Let's see here. We also have Roy Batty says, we the people allow it all. Yeah, well, that's part of the deal too, right? Like everyone's so busy that it's hard to really have the energy or time to do anything particular about stuff. But we also don't have the time or the energy to do those things. So someone else has to do some of those things that we're not capable of doing, like maintaining community stability and security, which is why we pay for other people to do it, right? So that's just kind of where it's at. Hustlebone says, point is that just that the entire institution has become tyrannical and doesn't resemble the vision or principles of the founders. Right, I think there's some truth to that, obviously. We all agree that the government has grown too big and too bloated, and I think that there are times where things are moving towards a level of improvement, but then we take one step forward and two steps back, right? So like this is just where we're at, and unfortunately on the trajectory we're currently at, there's only so much I think that can actually be remedied before we get to the point where it has to be restructured or something along those lines. Because, like you said, it's gotten to a point that's very difficult. Now, I'm not saying restructured necessarily means dismantled, but what I mean is that at the very least, like a reckoning and a return to more constitutionally based principles that allow us to operate as a more, let's just say, dignified nation, right? So, trying my best here. Christo, Mossberg MVP Scout 308. Hey, Christo, let me know, do those AR-10 magazines actually feed decently in that rifle? Because that's one of the interesting points of that rifle is it takes AR-10 style mags, but I heard that there's feeding issues because of the double stack structure. Let's see here. Everybody's here. Ohio Valley Prepping, good to see you. Glad you're here. Thank you for hanging out. Now, moving into, let's see here. We'll talk about this real quick. I'm not super concerned about it, but it just kind of shows another level of escalation that could be pushed now because of these types of orders, okay? Trump sanctions arrests of slimeball ICE protesters by any means necessary. Obviously, some of the courts have already jumped in to say there has to be probable cause, which of course there would be in most of these situations when there's violence and things of that nature. But this does turn things into a almost a eye for an eye scenario, because how far do we escalate it, and at what point do we find ourselves in actual heated scenarios, right? So here we are with President Donald Trump denounced thugs and slimeballs who have been protesting ICE in a Friday night Truth Social post, authorizing further arrests of protesters using any means necessary. On his way back from Texas, where he saw for himself the devastation caused by last week's floods, Trump took to his social media platform to complain about protesters who are attempting to prevent ICE agents from carrying out raids, largely in California. The president wrote, on my way back from Texas and watched in disbelief as thugs were violently throwing rocks and bricks at ICE officers while they were moving down a roadway in their car and or official vehicle. Tremendous damage was done to these brand new vehicles. I know for a fact that these officers are having a hard time with allowing this to happen, and that it shows such total disrespect for law and order. Therefore, I'm directing Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem and Border Czar Tom Homan to instruct all ICE, Homeland Security, or any other law enforcement officer who is on the receiving end of throwing rocks, bricks, or any other form of assault to stop their car, arrest these slime balls, and use whatever means necessary to do so. So that sounds reasonable in the sense of like, hey, they're literally assaulting our vehicles and putting us in danger, so they need to be arrested. But it does show that level of escalation, which I'm not saying isn't necessarily reasonable, but it is concerning, because how far do these escalations go? And if I throw a rock at a police car right now, I expect to get arrested. Like, that's what happens. But for some reason, in these scenarios, no one gets arrested. So I get where the frustration is, and I understand why the president is saying what he's saying. But I also know that this can, lead us down that rabbit hole of additional action from both sides, because then that side will say, oh, you think so? Well, here's what we're going to do now. And then when they do that thing, what does the other side do? They respond in kind. They say, okay, well, if you're going to do that, now we're going to do this. So it's very similar to what we see on the world stage when it comes to like Iran and Israel, right? They always come back at each other. It never ends. They just keep hitting each other with more stuff. And at what point does that stuff turn into like a nuclear weapon, right? So it's where I'm kind of putting, the thermometer on it to say, how hot is this getting? How soon will this spill over to other places? Or how large can it get in the sense of like national scale when it comes to turning this situation into a law enforcement slash police versus, this particular group of people or a portion of the citizenry that disagrees with their actions, and then what does that look like, and then how does that resolve? And that's kind of where I'm at right there, which is why I said this is the beginning in tonight's title, because it's what it looks like in the beginning of these types of conflicts. It's never an immediate thing. These things don't just happen overnight, but we are seeing, at least some of those building blocks being put into place that could eventually be built upon. So, a Colt Prepper, can you do a video on an AR-10 setup that's less than $1,500 for the basic rifle without any additional add-ons, then a second video for the additional add-ons? I could, but I don't have to really, because in my opinion, the right choice there is that you don't need a for a setup, if you're just worried about that and you want something that works and it actually works very well, the 716i is pretty much the way to go. So that's what I would just go get. If you're looking for under $1,500 and you want it to work and you don't want to have to worry about doing anything crazy with it, 716i by SIG. It's you know what? I'm not a big SIG fan lately, and I'm not a huge proponent of their company at this point in time for a lot of reasons, obviously. But it's still, at least in my opinion, the best AR-10 on the market for off the shelf, for the price, for the reliability. It's you can't beat it at its price point. So that's what I would just say right there, just to kind of I don't know, make that easier for you. So hopefully that helps. Now. Let's see here. Do you know who this person is? In a video, he appears to fire a gun at federal agents. The FBI is offering a reward up to $50,000 for information leading to a conviction. Right, yep, and that is exactly what we went over earlier in the chat tonight, but it is something that is obviously being put out there for quite a reward. Pretty substantial, to be honest. Okay, let's talk about a couple other things real quick. And I want to touch base on what just happened with Trump when it comes to Russia. They're threatening now to put tariffs on Russia if they don't come to the peace negotiating table and actually get something resolved. Trump threatens Russia with severe tariffs, announces Ukraine arms deal, right? So we're sending more arms to Ukraine, we're threatening Russia with tariffs, and we are just still dealing with this war in Europe. So no, it did not end in 24 hours. I don't think that was a smart thing for the president to promise, because I didn't believe it could happen to begin with. And of course, now it just looks bad in general because of the lack of resolution. United States President Donald Trump has confirmed the U.S. will send Ukraine more weapons and has threatened to levy steep tariffs on Russia amid his growing frustration over Russia's refusal to negotiate an end to the Russia-Ukraine war. I don't think tariffs are necessarily that effective for this particular situation, because our relationship with Russia, especially economically, is just already in a bad spot. So I don't know if this really moves the needle very much, but this is what's being put out there. Speaking at the White House on Monday during a meeting with NATO chief Mark Rutte, Trump said the U.S. would be sending billions of dollars in military equipment, including Patriot air defense systems and other missiles. These weapons, said Trump, will be paid for by NATO members. Okay? That's what we're doing. More money and more guns and more ammo to Ukraine, even though I'm pretty sure, just tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I just read a story recently that all the stuff we've been doing for Israel and defending their airspace and intercepting drones and things of that nature has depleted our weaponry and our stockpile. So there's concerns at the Pentagon about the level of munitions we currently have access to and not wanting to deplete them any further. But now we're just going to send more to Ukraine. So I don't know where we're at with that, but it just seems to be the way things are going. Let's see here. What's up, Nick Easy? Good to see you. Okay. No problem, Colt Prepper. I'm just being real. And honestly, I had a great experience with my 716i, and I know Hop, previously known as Hoplifile, is a big-time 716i enjoyer, and that should tell you something because he's relatively critical when it comes to performance, and he is an advocate of the 716i. So I don't know if that has any value for you, but I think it probably should. Let's see here. So Tony Elbow says war never changes. Yeah, 100%. It's just how it works, Hawthorne, how are those trees you planted? Doing good. Doing a little bit of landscaping around them to make sure that they're, they have all the opportunity to grow and not, be covered with, ground vines and everything else that seems to exist out here. But what's nice is that I think it's 94 of them have survived the winter now from last year. So, we have a 94% success rate. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm not very upset. They're doing very well. They're still very small. I'd like them to get much bigger, but at least we have live trees that are doing well, Okay, so that is what's going on. Another major arms deal going to Ukraine. Now, I do want to go ahead and talk about this really quickly just to kind of share some thoughts and give people some things to consider because it's contentious and it's frustrating, but here we are, and I'm going to address it regardless, okay? So we have the Epstein situation. Now, this has taken over the entire social media platforms of all of them, basically, regardless of ideology. If it's left, it's right, whatever it is, like this is the talk of the town because there's a lot of people who are feeling betrayed, upset, and lied to, and rightfully so. And this whole situation has been handled terribly, and I think that in retrospect, that a lot of people probably should, maybe not have jobs anymore, or at the very least need to reconsider their positions if they can't handle a situation this delicate with a little bit more finesse. So here's what I want to bring to your attention, okay? First off, am I upset about it? Of course, we're all upset about it. We were told things were going to happen. We were told we were going to receive information. And we were also just wanting these people to be brought to justice because what they were doing was, immoral and wrong. And that doesn't seem to be happening now, does it? So obviously there's discourse and tension within the administration as well as within other areas of the Justice Department and whatnot when it comes to this particular situation. So here's one thing I'm going to suggest to you, and this is just maybe personal advice, but it is something that I think is reasonable, but I'm not trying to take away from the fact that this is all messed up. I'm trying my best to avoid letting my emotional response take over the entire conversation. And I'm trying my best to try to access that little tiny part of my brain that only exists for small amounts of time, that only uses the pattern of logic. And I have questions that I need to answer, and there's things that I need to know. And so am I pissed? Yeah. And that's what concerns me, because that emotional reaction pushes you to possibly, I don't know, take some sort of action or take some sort of stance or form some sort of belief system that might not be organic because of the emotional reaction that's been placed upon you. And I don't know exactly how or why, but this is something that I'm just considering, and I'm wanting to, figure out a way for us to kind of discuss it without it just being we're pissed about it, right? Because what does that do? It does nothing for us. So here's something I wanted to bring up. I just searched Epstein, and I went to the news tab, and you can see here that it's all the usual culprits are using this story for their agenda. And so I think that that's, first off, not necessarily a red flag, but something to consider, right? I think about these things as I go through this kind of more emotional information. I say, okay, look, I'm pissed about it. This is bullshit. We were lied to our faces and treated like we were idiots. And now I'm very upset. But when I get very upset, when I get very emotional about something, I try to take the advice of Spock. And I get out here, hold on, there you go. And I get out here and I say, okay, robot mode, let's just start looking at info with a blank surface and not use emotional reaction while doing so. So I'm doing that, and I'm looking through these stories, and I'm like, okay, all these stories now are from the usual sources that use every opportunity they can to try to demolish the current administration when possible, and they're using it quite well in the sense of leverage right now in order to show that there should be a level of discontent and a level of discourse. And then I try to think about the fact that all this information was still relevant and available and existed prior to this current administration, but this level of vitriol and outcry didn't exist from these outlets. So then I start to try to think about, why is there a difference now, or what is this being used for? And then I also try to think about what is it that might be going on that I haven't thought about that maybe this is trying to take over for a reason for, right? What major event or what major turning point is occurring right now that I'm not focused on and you're not focused on because of this story being so prominent and being so emotionally driven and charged that it's forcing us to only pay attention to it, to use our energy and our anger on it, and to be, well, even more divided now than we were previously. To what purpose or for whose benefit? And the benefit sounds obvious of, well, the people who are involved, they don't want anyone to know about what's going on here, and they're the trash bags who need to be prosecuted or even, just let's just say not exist anymore. But those people probably weren't going anywhere to begin with now, were they? So what is driving this to the point where it's at right now, right? And so these are questions that I ask. I'm not excusing the current administration for the handling of the situation. I think it's abhorrent, and I think that everyone has a right to be pissed off because we were lied to by many different members of the administration regarding this particular situation, and then we also were expected to just say, hey, no big deal, right? Which is just not the way this is going to go. So I'm trying to figure this out, because if I was the enemy, and this is just me saying this, guys, Potato Head says, I'm tired of hearing about it. Right, I get that too. I'm okay with you feeling that way. I understand. But here's the way I want to just kind of frame this to give you something to consider, not telling you what to think, telling you something to question or maybe think about. Who can use this to the most benefit? And if you are the enemy of America, or if you're the enemy of people like ourselves, is this not one of the best possible outcomes right now? And then are you using this as a way to additionally create that chaos and instability that you so desire? And so I'm not saying that it wasn't involving the people who are in charge of these types of manners, because they could have easily been manipulated or pushed as well, or who knows what else, corrupted, right? But we have to go beyond surface level. I try to. Whenever these emotionally charged things occur, I don't want to just say, I'm pissed, and that's why nobody should care about anything anymore. Because what does that do for everyone? Literally nothing. It's very easy to sell. If you want to be a right-wing commentator on X, you can go over there now and you can just start saying how pissed you are, and you can start telling everybody that, yeah, we all agree, so that's how you know I'm cool, and make sure you sign up for my subscription so you can do X, Y, or Z, right? Like that's the thing to do if you want to do that. But I refuse to just take everything surface level and just go with it, because that's what we're supposed to do. And then anytime we're supposed to do something, I have more questions, because why are we supposed to do this? So I'm trying to, I'm trying to figure out more. But right now I don't have the answers. But I just wanted to give you at least something to consider, to maybe, hey, I know you're pissed. I'm also pissed. Let's ask some more questions. I'm not trying to displace blame on anybody. I think the blame is properly set already, and we know exactly where it lays. But I also think that we need to ask more questions about why it's happening in the way that it's happening. Because, man, what a dessert on a silver platter for anybody who wanted to destabilize any level of unity or support that the country seemed to have at a certain point in time, right? So that's where I'm at on that. Regardless, just to kind of reiterate, anybody who is involved with the egregious criminal activities or anything along those lines involving Epstein or anybody else in that particular organization, they don't need to be on this plane anymore. So that's just my 2 cents, and I don't really care if that is hyperbolic, but it's just the truth. So here we are, and I wanted to just make sure to address that, because I know everybody's talking about it, but I don't hear anybody talking about it with any level of nuance or deep thought. It's either I don't care because my guy said I shouldn't, or it's it's proof that I was always right about everything, right? It's one or the other, and I don't think it works that way, and I think we can all, as adults, agree it doesn't work that way, right? So let's go ahead and jump back in here. Let's see. Yeah, the blackmail organizations and everything else, hustle bones, exactly. I mean, but man, those people go above and beyond. They don't just say, "Oh, blackmail," like that. Like they're part of the entire process, no matter what we want to do or look at it as. It's just the truth. Derek, great live stream, MP. Well, thank you, Derek, and I appreciate you always hanging out. You're a great person because I said so, and I just believe it. So let's see here. Darkwoods presents, or is it Darkwoods presents? Like, oh, we're in the dark woods and a gnome just gave me a present. Now I feel good, right? So I'm not sure, but I still like you and I'm glad you're here. And of course, I just want everybody to, keep preparing. The biggest thing that I found, and this is something I'm just gonna share with everybody. Donald Trump took office and a giant portion of the country just stopped preparing, like immediately. Ammo sales are down. Firearm sales are down. Emergency food sales are down. Solar power bank sales are down. Water system sales are like anything related to emergency preparedness is now down when it comes to interest and investment. And to me, that is a problem because you should never just, ship your personal safety and security off to someone else, no matter who's in charge. Yet a large portion of our country decided that was the right move. And that's just not a good idea, right? I work now with like certain members of the industry. So when it comes to different companies and stuff like that, I'm aware of like the situations involving like sales slumps and interest being down. I mean, even just views on videos about preparedness are way down. Go to any prepper channel and watch some of their like standard preparedness related videos. They're not being watched nearly as much as they were before. So, and that's unfortunate because there's no one in charge can just say, oh, there's not going to be a hurricane this year, or there's not going to be a war suddenly between Pakistan and India, right? Like there's like all things can just happen still. We're still like, there's more war now than there was 6 months ago. That's just the truth of it, right? We've seen way more interactions between Iran and Israel. We've seen way more interactions with India and Pakistan. We've seen all these interactions with Russia and Ukraine, all this other stuff going on. And maybe it's part of what has to happen in order to get to the point of calming. But right now, things are very tumultuous. And yet people have literally just sold their own preparedness out to someone else to deal with because we don't have to worry about it right now. And it's unfortunate because I think it's a bad idea, and I think that it's going to probably bite some people in the butt when they realize probably shouldn't have done that. So that's where we're at. Marine X, hey, good to see you. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you. If you guys don't know, Marine X has a good channel as well. He does a lot of EDC related reviews and things of that nature. So make sure you check him out because he's got some really like crisp content. Like the production quality is really good. Like I'm not that guy, clearly. I'm just bad at it, but he does a great job. So Porky Prepper, I've been waiting for the generator price to go down. This has been good for me. Patience, Grasshopper. Yes, well, here's the thing. If you need ammo or gun parts or generators or food supplies or anything like that, like now is when you buy that stuff. When no one else is buying it, when the sales are down and the sales are going on these websites and stuff, like that's when you buy it. You don't wait till everybody's panicking again. You get it while it's less expensive or more available at the very least because you have more options, more selection, and you have better pricing usually. So like now's the time, but unfortunately, less people are aware of that because they're not paying attention. So it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating. And just so you guys know, I started my channel in 2019 when Trump was still president, right? I didn't just start prepping because Biden became president, right? But a lot of people, it seems like, did. Yes, it interacted with COVID as well, so that's reasonable. But as soon as Trump got elected this past year, it was over. Like people are just like, okay, cool, we're fine now. It's like, man, that's just not how it works. So, By the Peak says N19H75H1F73R. I don't know if I like that advice, but that's what you said. So, all right. Bear Arms Channel, have you looked into fixing your strabismus? No, because both of my eyes are lazy and I use them independently. It's just at the point in my life where I'm like, whatever, man, whatever. It's never really held me back all that much, but it is annoying, right? Because people are like, are you looking at me? And I'm like, oh, maybe. Do you really need to know? But in case anybody's wondering, that's why I usually wear sunglasses in my outside videos because I just don't want to like weird people out. But if anybody here is working in any type of production, whether or not it's like, film or something like that, and they need someone to be like a weird, crazy looking bad guy or scientist, let me know, because first off, I have great hair for it. Second off, I have weird eyes, and I can definitely pull off the insane or crazy look. And third off, I'm 6'3" and 210 pounds, and I feel like that's relatively intimidating enough for film when all the actors are like 5'7". So let me know. I got you, bro, Well, hey, guys, I got the private live stream starting here in about 15 minutes, or actually 10 minutes now. And if you want to be in the private live stream, hit the join button down below, become a channel member. You can get to the private live stream by going to my channel page, hitting the posts tab, and then you can get the link. If you're a Subscribe Star member, it's $5 a month. It supports the channel directly. We also can chat on there or whatever else it is you want to do. And of course, I do need to do more content there, but I've been very bad about it in all honesty, so I apologize. But if you want to be a Subscribe Star member, it's $5 a month, and you can get into the private live stream by doing that as well. So I'll go ahead and pop that link into the live chat if you're interested. And then currently the best way to support the channel is to buy an MP field tool. And I'm just going to say that one more time because I'm very, very proud of it. I made a product in the USA that's unique and has original design aspects to it and weighs 0.6 ounces and will help you in your Rifleman or Minuteman kit with maybe even being able to ditch a traditional multi-tool in the process depending on your use case and saving a lot of weight. So like my Leatherman mutt weighs 10 ounces, this thing weighs 0.6. So it is substantial in that regard, and you can find them on magicprepper.com. It's something I'm very proud of, but also something I'm just blown away by regarding support of it. And thank you for that, because I can't thank you all enough for the support this channel receives. Not only when it comes to like the tool, but the amount of support I've gotten just from you guys watching the videos and subscribing and being here in these live streams. It's been very, I don't know what to say, just humbling, right? So I appreciate you. Thank you very much. And let's see what we can put together for next week. And besides that, it's going to be it for Magic Prepper.